In this lecture, we explore African Pentecostalism as a dominant ecclesiastical paradigm in Africa of the 21st century, as a church model that is appearing to be more visible in our contemporary African society. Afro-Pentecostalism becomes a critical study as we explore contemporary trends in Christian theology. The times when Pentecostalism was largely seen as not important or it was ignored in academic circles is long gone, as their influence in modern society is visibly being felt even within the so-called mainline churches. We can feel the weight of Pentecostalism, and in Africa we would call it Afro-Pentecostalism or African Pentecostalism. Now, in talking about Afro-Pentecostal theology, I want to start by saying Afro-Pentecostalism itself can be defined as a Pentecostal model that ably dialogues with some rich elements of African cultural heritage in their general conduct, in the way we make speeches, in the way we make our sermons, in the way they conduct their rituals, and generally in their ecclesiastical services. This model of Afro-Pentecostalism in Africa has emerged in the 21st century as the most dominant, visible everywhere. You go to the mainland churches, you find it, some elements of it. Even the so-called charismatism in the Roman Catholic wing of the church, you find elements of it there. Within the other mainland churches, the missionary churches, the Presbyterians, the Anglicans, even Anglican has become Anglicostal because it's not really the Anglican we knew in the 20th century. But in the 21st century, some element of Pentecostalism, and in Africa, Afro-Pentecostalism, they are visible in every church in Africa today. And it goes beyond, Afro-Pentecostalism goes beyond Pentecostalism as we know it, with its resultant emphasis on the infilling of the Holy Spirit by adopting those it is adopted unconsciously, not really consciously, but unconsciously. African models of concern, African models of dancing, in a vibrant way, African ways of, use of drums, dance, being noisy, sort of African society, we call it noisy society. All that is there in Afro-Pentecostal churches. Although they are conscious, they are not conscious of it. The element of Africanity, they are there. You find their leadership making use of riddles, proverbs, rhythms, African metaphors, African idioms. They are there. African oral narratives. In other words, Pentecostalism in Africa today cannot be called Pentecostalism as such. It has to be Afro-Pentecostal because of the many elements of African culture that they have embraced. And despite the fact that they don't concede they have element of African indigenous forms within their Pentecostalism, it is very clear African ethos of wholeness are captured, where even sickness is a spiritual matter and people want to pray for it to go, just as independent churches do. Indeed, a reader attempts to address all problems facing the society holistically. For example, as I've noted, sickness is not only physical, but spiritual. Now, the challenges may include barrenness, witchcraft, inter-clan and inter-ethnic rivalries, and so forth. Pentecostalism in Africa who attempt to solve such problems. In breeding African ethos of wholeness with Pentecostal experience, as seen in Acts chapter 2, the Afro-Pentecostalism can also be described as the emerging Christianity in Africa of the 21st century. It is referred to as African Christianities and not just African Christianity because of the plural nature of the African society and for which it is presented. The diversity of expression further makes it plural rather than singular. Of course, we have challenges also when you think of how the new religious movement, some are chaotic, some are dangerous to society, are coming up and claiming to be Pentecostals or Afro-Pentecostals in Africa. And sometimes they are causing a lot of challenges in Africa of the 21st century. That makes it a bit complicated. But the real Afro-Pentecostal is a conventional church, only that it has its own characteristics that will be considered here. Now, in Kenya, as in the rest of the Africa, in the rest of Africa, Afro-Pentecostals have appealing names such as Mombasa Pentecostal Churches, Deliverance Church of Kenya, Jesus is Alive Ministries, Jesus Celebration Center, Neno meaning word, Neno Evangelism or Neno Evangelism Ministries, the Happy Churches, Faith Evangelistic Ministries, Jubilee Christian Center, Christ is the Answer to Everything Ministry, Winners Chapel International Ministries, among others. That is a unique characteristic. Even the names, you can see they are unique. They show where the actual appeal, where each church is appealing to, such as issues such as redemption church, defined church, and all that. Another characteristic is the emphasis on the outpouring of the Holy Spirit for salvation, for witnessing, for prayer, for healing. A person who does not have the gift of speaking in tongues or glossolalia is encouraged to pray for it, plus other supernatural gifts such as prophesying, discerning, and healing, among others. In particular, glossolalia or speaking in tongues is regarded to be the physical sign of the descent of the Holy Spirit upon an individual, as was in the case of the early church, as we find in Acts chapter 2. A third characteristic is the exuberance in their mood of worship, a phenomenon which is spiced by lively dancing, sophisticated music gadgets with melodies akin to contemporary secular music. Now, the mode of delivering the sermon is such that pulpit is avoided or removed from the church altogether. The poignant and or alluring preacher in his or her tailor-made sermon appeals to the psychological as well as the material needs of the assembly. And due to his or her bewildering presentation, the preacher holds the audience captive for more than 1 hour, sometimes even for 3 hours. They are still listening to the sermon. And that's a characteristic of lengthening their sermons. Of course, in the era of COVID-19, every church, particularly in Kenya, they are encouraged to spend less than 1 hour in a church to avoid more infections. But of course, they are complaining in the social media that you don't have to cut hours of worship. Worship has to be given time. The Spirit of God has to speak. Of course, that's dangerous. And sometimes the real Pentecostals are not the ones speaking. But these other ones, the so-called, some of these so-called new religious movements, or some wayward, could be the ones who are not realistic enough, in my view. A fourth characteristic is the public invitations for the members of the general society to come for your miracle, come for your healing, come for your financial breakthrough, all your physical needs. Your physical needs will be prayed for. Come now. And you see, they move around. Sometimes they invite you through powerful public address systems that are mounted via a Land Rover, a car, moving around the streets in the city, in the rural areas. And the chorus is driven around the area, inviting people, come for your miracle, come for this. And they argue that biblically you don't have to write up your ramp and you don't expose it to the people. It's supposed to give you enough right for everyone. So they go out to get people, and they have a way of justifying it biblically and theologically to show that they are doing the right thing. A fifth and the last characteristic in Afro-Pentecostal is the employing of the principles of market capitalism in the social discourses. As one scholar by name Richard Shaw once noted around the year 2002, the poor and broken people discover that in Pentecostalism, what they read in the Gospels is happening now in their midst. In view of this, Pentecostal approach reflects basic principles of market capitalism, a phenomenon that is driven by demand of popular consumerism. In this model, what sells best is produced, packaged, and supplied as a result. We may not say more in this lecture, but there's a lot of activities that we need to carry out in order to know this information in details. Of course, there are a lot of publications we can look for in the web on Afro-Pentecostalism. First, is Afro-Pentecostalism a threat to the mainland churches or the missionary churches today? Are they a threat? The other question or the other concern is, how can Afro-Pentecostalism address the moral question? Because there's a lot of moral issues that needs to be tackled in the 21st century Africa, with the breakdown of morals, the breakdown of traditional norms, with the don't care attitude now with us, with our youth in the modern society. The moral question is an issue. The last one is apply knowledge gathered in this lesson to demonstrate how current challenges can be overcome. Thank you very much.